Hi, Lord Woody, and welcome to a little history lesson. Two things. One, the top of my hair is pink, so if you see that, don't ask. Second of all, we're gonna mosey on in. We're gonna talk about the Zodiac killer, because kids in my class are talking about it, and it seems interesting to me. It really does. So, although the Zodiac claimed 37 murders according to letters to the newspapers, the investigators only agree on seven confirmed victims, two of whom survived. These seven confirmed victims are David Arthur Faraday, who was 17, Betty Lou Jensen, who was 16, Michael Renaud Megao, who was 19, Darlene Elizabeth Farron, 22, Brian Calvin Hartnell, 20, Cecilia Ann Shepard, 22, Paul Lee Stein, 29. Well, yeah, that's it. And suspected murder victims are Robert Dingos, 18, Linda Edwards, 17, Cherry Joe Bates, 18, Donna Lass, 25, and Kathleen Johns, who was 22. Those names that I just named are suspected victims of the Zodiac killer. But let's talk about that timeline and what happened. Most people are out there and know what I'm going to talk about after this. So, the first murders widely attributed to the Zodiac killer were the shootings of high school students Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday on December 20th, 1968, on Lake Herman Road, just inside the Benicia city limits. The couple were on their first date and planned to attend a Christmas concert at Hogan High School, about 3 blocks from Jensen's home. The couple instead visited a friend before stopping at a local restaurant and then driving out on Lake Herman Road. At about 10:15 p.m., Faraday parked his mother's Rambler in a gravel turnout, which was well-known Lover's Lane. Shortly after 11 p.m., their bodies were found by Stella Boers, who lived nearby. The Solano County Sheriff's Department investigated the crime, but no leads were developed. Utilizing available forensic data, Robert Graysmith postulated that another car pulled into the turnout just prior to 11 and parked beside the couple. The killer apparently exited the second car and walked toward the Rambler, possibly ordering the couple out of the Rambler. Jensen appeared to have exited the car first, yet Faraday was halfway out. The killer apparently shot Faraday in the head. Fleeing from the killer, Jensen was gunned down 28 feet from the car with 5 shots through her back. Then, the killer drove off. Just before midnight on July 4th, 1969, Darlene Farron and Michael Miguel drove into the drove into the Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, 4 miles from the Lake Herman Road murder site, and parked. While the couple sat in Farron's car, a second car drove into the lot and parked alongside them, but almost immediately drove away. Returning about 10 minutes later, the second car parked behind them. The driver of the second car then exited the vehicle, approaching the passenger side of the door of Farron's car, carrying a flashlight and a 9mm Luger, which is a pistol. The killer directed the flashlight into Miguel's and Ferreira's eyes before shooting at them, firing 5 times. Both victims were hit, and several bullets passed through Miguel into Ferrin. The killer walked away from the car, but upon hearing Miguel's moaning, returned and shot each of them twice more before driving off. Then, on July 5th, 1969, at 12:40 a.m., a man phoned the Vallejo Police Department to report and claim responsibility for the attack. The killer also took credit for the murders of Jensen and Faraday 6.5 months earlier. The police traced the phone call to a phone booth at a gas station at Springs Road and Tumalim, about 3/10 of a mile from Farron's home and only a few blocks from the Vallejo Police Department. Farron was announced dead at the hospital, and Mayo survived the attack despite being shot in the face, neck, and chest. Now, here's where the creepy stuff gets in. On August 1st, 1969, 3 letters prepared by the killer were received at Vallejo Times-Herald and San Francisco Chronicle and San Francisco Examiner. The, the nearly the nearly identical letters took credit for the shootings at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. Each letter also included 1/3 of a 408 symbol cryptogram. The letter claimed contained his identity. The killer demanded that they be printed on each newspaper front page, or he would cruise around all weekend killing low people at night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend. This is what he said, by the way. The Chronicle published its third cryptogram on a page 4 of the next day's edition. An article printed alongside the quote, Vale Police Chief Jack E. Stilts was saying, "We're not satisfied that the letter was written by the murderer," and requested the writer send a second letter with more facts to prove his identity. The threatened letters did not happen again, and all three parts were eventually published. On August 7th, 1969, another letter was received at the San Francisco Examiner with the salutation, "Dear Editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." This was the first time the killer had used this name for identification. The letter was a response to Chief Stilt's request for more details that would prove that he killed Faraday, Jensen, and Farron. In it, the Zodiac included details about the murders which had not yet been released to the public, as well as a message to the police that when they crack their code, this code, they will have me. New York, man. I should not be reading this right now. I hear noises all over my house and I'm home alone. On August 8th, 1969, Donald and Beth Hardin of Salinas, California, cracked the 408 symbol cryptogram. It contained a misspelled message in which the killer said he was collecting slaves for the afterlife. No name appears in the decoded test, and the killer said that he would not give away his identity because it would slow down or stop his slave collection. This is what was said inside that 408 symbol letter. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because a man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in a paradise, and they have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for the afterlife. And then a whole bunch of gibberish letters. On September 27, 1969, Pacific Union College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking at Lake Varesa on Small Island connected to Sandpit up to Twin Oak Ridge. A man approached them wearing a black executioner's type hood with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes and a bib-like device on his chest that had a white 3x3 cross symbol on it. He approached them with a gun, which Hartnell believed to be a .45. The hooded man claimed to be an escaped convict from Deer Lodge, Montana, where he had killed a guard and stolen a car, explaining that he needed their car and money to go to Mexico. He said he had brought pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline and told Shepard to tie up Hartnell before he tied her up. The killer checked and tightened Hartnell's bonds after discovering Shepard had bound Hartnell's hands loosely. Hartnell initially believed it to be a weird robbery, but the man drew a knife and stabbed them both repeatedly. The killer then hiked 500 yards back up to Knoxville Road, drew the cross-line symbol on Hartnell's car door with a black tip felt pen, and wrote beneath it, Vallejo 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27th, 69, 6:30 by knife. At At 7:40 p.m., the killer called Napa County Sheriff's Office from a payphone to report his latest crime. The phone was found still off the hook minutes later at the Napa Car Wash on Main Street in Napa by KVON radio reporter Pat Stanley, only a few blocks from the sheriff's office, yet 27 miles from the crime scene. Detectives were able to lift a still wet palm print from the telephone, but not able to match it to any suspect. After hearing their screams for help, a man and his son who were fishing in a nearby cove discovered the victims and summoned help by contacting park rangers. Napa County Sheriff's deputies Dave Collins and Ray Land were the first law enforcement officers to arrive at the crime scene. Cecilia Shepard was conscious when Collins arrived, providing him with a detailed description of the attacker. Hartnell and Shepard were taken to the Queen of the Valley Hospital in Napa by ambulance. Shepard lapsed in a coma during transport to the hospital and never regained consciousness. She died 2 days later, but Hartnell survived to recount his tale to the press. Napa County Sheriff Detective Ken Narlow, who was assigned to the case from the outset, worked on solving the crime until his retirement from the department in 1987. 2 weeks later, on October 11th, 1969, a passenger entered the cab driven by Paul Steen at the intersection of Mason and Geary Streets, 1 block west from Union Square in San Francisco, requesting to be taken to Washington and Maple Streets in Presidio Heights. For reasons unknown, Stein drove 1 block past Maple to Cherry Street. The passenger then shot Steen once in the head with a 9mm, took Steen's wallet and car keys, and tore away a section of Steen's blood-stained shirt tail. This passenger was observed by 3 teenagers across the street at 9:55 p.m., who called the police while the crime was in progress. They observed a man wiping the cab down before walking away towards the Presidio, 1 block to the north. 2 blocks from the crime scene, Officer Don Folk, responding to the call, observed a white man walking along the sidewalk and stepping onto a stairway leading up to the front yard of one of the homes on the north side of the street. The encounter lasted only 5 to 10 seconds. The radio dispatcher had alerted to be on the lookout for a black suspect, so they drove past him without stopping. The mix-up in descriptions remains unexplained to this day. A search ensued, but no possible suspects were found. The 3 teen witnesses worked with a police artist to prepare a composite sketch of the Steen's killer. Then, a few days later, the police artist returned, working with the witnesses to prepare a second composite sketch of the killer. Detective Bill Armstrong and Dave Tuschke were assigned to the case. The San Francisco Police Department investigated an estimated 2,500 suspects over a period of years. This is where it gets This is where it gets scary. On October 14th, 1969, the Chronicle received yet another letter from the Zodiac, this time containing a swatch of Paul Steen's shirt tail as a proof that he was the killer. It also included a threat about killing school children on a school bus. To do this, Zodiac wrote, "Just shoot out the front tire, then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." At 2 p.m. on October 20th, 1969, someone claiming to be the Zodiac called Oakland PD demanding that one of the 2 prominent lawyers, F. Lee Bailey or Melvin Bailey, appear on the local television show AM San Francisco, hosted by Jim Dunbar. Bailey was not available, but Bailey did appear on the show. Dunbar appealed to the viewers to keep the lines open, and eventually someone claiming to be the Zodiac called several times and said his name was Sam. Bailey agreed to meet with him in Daly City, but the suspect never showed up. On November 8th, 1969, Zodiac mailed a card with another cryptogram consisting of 340 characters. This cipher has never been decoded. Numerous possible solutions have been suggested, but none can be claimed as definitive. The next day, the Zodiac mailed a 7-page letter stating the 2 policemen stopped and actually spoke with him. The Zodiac the next day mailed a 7-page letter stating that the 2 policemen stopped and actually spoke with him 3 minutes after he shot Steen. Excerpts from the letter were published into the Chronicle on November 12th, including Zodiac's claim. That same day, Officer Don Fluke wrote a memo explaining what happened the night of Steen's murder. On December 20th, 1969, exactly 1 year after the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, the Zodiac mailed a letter to Belly that included another swatch of Steen's shirt. The Zodiac said he wanted Belly to help him. I'm gonna end this video here, but just in case you want to know, that that right there is the signature of the Zodiac killer. It is a circle with a cross right through the middle. And that does it for this video, but there is a 2 or 3 part um, episode that I'm going to chop up to leave you on your toes. Next episode, we're going to continue about the Zodiac Killer's stories and his timeline. And then on the third episode, or maybe in the second episode, we're going to reveal some secrets that might make you wonder if this person should be president. Anyway, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and to fly with me wherever I go. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!